Okay, guys, there is a 2x Void event coming up. So it's going to be 2x pull rates for epics and legendaries from Void shards over this coming weekend. That means if you're going to purchase any packs, hold on to those Void shards because this weekend we got double drops. Also, if you guys have noticed, there is a new faction coming to the game. They just went ahead and kind of put the little preview if you check news, and it kind of looks like it's going to be like an Asian samurai faction that's coming. That got leaked a while ago on like a Brazilian Facebook or something, I forget where, and we figured that out. But yeah, the next faction looks like it's going to be like, you know, Asia, samurai, you know, that kind of thing. Also, last thing, there is going to be a costume contest live streamed on my Twitch tonight, Twitch TV/Darth Microtransaction. In approximately 8 hours from the release of this video, there is going to be a Star Wars costume contest. I actually have a costume. I'm going to be going and filming the whole thing, and it's all going to be live streamed. I'll put a link. Make sure to catch that. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's the first thing I'm going out and doing live with the public. Okay, and with that PSA, let's go ahead and get into today's video. Now, recently, if you guys have been watching my videos, you saw me pull Valkyrie. Valkyrie, for me, is just, it's amazing that I got her. I'm so happy that I received her. If you look at her stats, this is why I have her at. She's not perfect, but she's scaled just for a slow counter team for the clan boss. And today's video is going to be kind of talking about the clan boss. I wanted to do some clan boss runs, first of all, because I need to do mine anyway. Second of all, because I kind of wanted to talk about clan boss, what makes a clan boss team good, and some options more for beginners, because normally we kind of talk about late game, you know, what you need. I mean, look at this team, right? It's disgusting. We got Alton, we got, you know, Rosin. This is a very, very disgusting, overpowered team, okay? And not everyone's going to have this. I mean, I didn't even have this until like $8,000 in a year into the game. So let's try to talk a little bit more about something that might be helpful for beginners. When it comes to starting out in the game, really you're looking for the same things that the majority of in-game players are. You're going to want an attack down, but your attack down options are limited. If you've pulled like a veteran out of a Void Shard or a Bog Walker, things like that, maybe you can use it temporarily. There's plenty of videos out there already talking about which champions are attack down, which are defense down, etc. Okay, so you can find those no problem. But as far as attack down goes, there are rares out there that will do it. If you're just starting out the game, it's acceptable to only have like the 25% version of attack down, but you're really aiming for that 50% attack down. That's one of the major things, okay? That's going to help give you survivability. Another thing that's going to help give you survivability is a way to heal. In order to heal, you're either going to need a dedicated healer, or you're going to need to fill out your entire team with lifesteal sets. That way, when they either counterattack, which we'll talk about later, or they attack naturally by themselves, they'll heal. However, keep in mind that a lot of times in-game players like myself will recommend lifesteal sets because we have masteries such as War Master and Giant Slayer, and we will get large chunks of heals when those proc, as lifesteal does proc off of those on-hit effects. That being said, it's not as effective at the lower levels, but at the lower levels, the boss does less damage and you need less healing, so therefore it is still effective regardless of what difficulty you are at. Some basic healers to keep an eye out for when you're beginning the game is anybody that's going to do like continuous healing is very effective. But if you happen to pull any epics like Steel Skull, for instance, is one of the top ones. But you know, people like Doompriest, Frask, really anybody in the very beginning that's going to give an entire team-wide heal, that's fine. Anybody that has that type of option, you don't even need a healer. It's especially at the lower levels, but it's just a little bit more information for you. I went with Bad El Khazar and Lifesteal sets. Obviously, Bad El is a team-wide healer with continuous healing and Lifesteal, but if I didn't have Bad El, I could probably still survive almost the same if I had just like another defense up or something like maybe Steel Skull, who's a less major healer, if that makes sense, but instead gives you some more utility. So survivability is one aspect of the game, and that's going to kind of cover that in a very basic encapsulation so you can understand the cores of survivability with attack down, defense up, healing, and I'm not going to go into like unkillable shields and block damage and more of like the complicated strats. Just think of attack down, shields, and healing as the first fundamental core of survivability. That's survivability. Now let's go into dealing damage, okay? In order to deal damage, you're going to want a defense down on them at least. The defense down is going to help you do more damage with just your standard attacks, as well as if you do get the masteries eventually and you have Giant Slayer or War Master, it's going to increase the damage done by those procs as well. It does not increase damage done by like poisons and things like that. Those are just static numbers, but the defense down and weaken, which is kind of another version of it, will help you deal more damage. Now let's talk about weaken. Weaken has two different versions, as does defense down. There's a 30 and 60% of defense down and a 15 and 25% of weaken respectively. Now defense down penetrates the armor by the amount mentioned, and weaken increases the amount of damage done by the percentage, meaning if you have 15% weaken, everyone on your team does 15% more damage to the person who is weakened, and 25% will do 25% increased damage. Obviously, both of these debuffs will help you increase your damage and will help make you in the end game, once you get there, significantly increase your proc damage from Giant Slayer and War Master. But in the beginning, it's also crucial because the majority of your damage just comes from basic attacks and poisons, things like that. And the basic attacks will do more damage from the defense down and weaken. Now, keep in mind, defense down and weaken, these are helpful, but not required to do damage in the beginning of the game. In the very beginning of the game, and I'm talking easy, normal, maybe even eking into hard clan boss, for the most part, you're going to be doing your damage with poisons and HP burn. Now, if you're noticing here, you'll probably see the majority of my damage was done by my Nethro, and some of that's Giant Slayer, but a large portion of that is the poisons. Now, poisons are always going to trigger at the start of the clan boss's turn, and it's going to trigger, for instance, on Ultra Nightmare, 50,000 damage per stack, but it's different amounts of damage depending on which boss you're attacking, because it triggers based upon max health, does a certain percentage. And that damage is going to be the majority of your damage. It's also why survivability is so important, because in order for poison to trigger and effectively give you more damage, the clan boss needs to take more turns. After the 10th turn of the clan boss, every turn he takes consecutively increases his overall damage and power. For that reason, survivability is also crucial when it comes to damage application, as it will allow you to stay longer into the waves. Now, there's also two more crucial, important points about this team you're going to see. One of which is that I have a cleanse. A cleanse can be extremely important on the person who moves first on your team, meaning somebody who can remove a debuff, either targeted or one debuff on everybody. People like Doom Priest would do this, but Steel Skull would also do this, as well as providing damage with a poison up and defense with a defense up, to give you an example. There are people out there that can cleanse, and the reason you want this is after the boss does his AoEs, he's going to punch one of your guys and trigger a stun. And if you can cleanse that stun, you can effectively do more damage over time, because you're making sure one person isn't skipping their turns. Plus, if he punches somebody crucial, like your counterattack, your defense up, something like that, it can really ruin things for you. Other thing that I want to mention is a way to remove a buff. When a clan boss goes below a certain HP, and that certain HP being 50%, when it drops below 50%, it gains an affinity advantage. When it gains an affinity advantage, you'll see now it's a force affinity, no longer void. It becomes stronger, as well as it can gain an attack up buff on itself, and you'll need a way to remove that buff if you wish to have increased survivability. Now, Rosin does do that on his basic attack, so he fits that role as well as the defense down and weaken. Okay, now the last thing is a counterattack. Now I have Skull Crusher and I have Valkyrie. I can use either one of them or both, etc. But the counterattack is something that I'm not really going to go into super depth here. And the reason is this is for beginners and this is teaching you the basics. If you pull a counterattack, Valkyrie, Skull Crusher, Martyr, put them in a lifesteal set, go ahead and throw them in your team. They're going to just help increase your damage. In the later game, when it comes to Nightmare and Ultra Nightmare, you want to get her speeds, or their speed for the counterattack set at like 171 or 191. So they go last on your team to get the counterattack up right before the AoE comes. That way it doesn't fall off, etc. And there's some more detailed, nuanced stuff, like you actually want to give them this type of masteries where they counterattack. That way, when they counterattack, they heal from the lifesteal set, etc. So there's a bunch of nuances to the counterattacks, and that's probably going to be its own video in and of itself, talking about how to use counterattacks in the clan boss. If you get one, just throw it into your team in addition. It's going to increase your team's power all the way through, okay? And it is basically required, unless you have a disgusting team in the in-game, to have a counterattack. So keep your eyes peeled for Skull Crusher, Martyr, and Valkyrie, and for the love of God, don't crush Skull Crusher if you get them. Okay, and in the end here, I just kind of wanted to talk to you guys and say, thanks so much again for the subs. We've still been growing, and I wanted to say an extended shout out and thank you to everyone who subscribed to Kyra Mobo's channel, because he's been gaining like 100 subs in the last 2 days or something. He's very excited, so I'm happy to see him gaining subs as well. Also, don't forget, live stream tonight on Twitch, www.twitch.tv/Darth Microtransaction, Star Wars costume contest, and I have a costume I am going to be wearing. And I'm going to be live streaming from my phone, so it'll be ghetto, but it'll be fun. Okay, join, come watch it. I love you guys. All right, bye.